Today's talk is going to be on the empty nest syndrome, and I don't know how many of you have any experience with it or are experiencing it now, but I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Teri Pugh, and I am a mother that has experienced empty nest syndrome myself. I have a daughter that's a senior here at the University of Evansville, Callie, and she'll be coming up in a few minutes to field any questions that you guys may have about your child's, maybe any concerns with homesickness or keeping those lines of communication open with your child, and also their need for expanding their wings a little bit and getting out from underneath us, but maintaining a grounding to home. So my personal experience with it is that when I prepared and Callie prepared for her college experience, and when we dropped her off on the 11th, or 2011, her freshman year, nothing could have prepared us for that. I mean, we extended the day as long as we could. We did the trip to Walmart, we did the lunch, and in the sessions that they taught us in SOAR, we spoke of in SOAR, was bring them in, unpack them, and let them go. That was not going to happen. So I stretched that day. If there could have been 10 more hours, I would have had them. So, but driving away that day solidified kind of that need for the empty nest, and I cried all the way home. And it just so happened that on our trip up, she had expressed that she had a stomach ache, and mom mode stepped in. It's just your nerves, honey. You're fine. It's just your nerves. And the next day it was, I still have a stomach ache. And the next day I get a text message from St. Mary's. She's in the hospital getting IV fluids because she had a stomach virus that had taken her out of the knees. So my first impression or instinct was to jump in the car and go fix it. I need to get up there, I need to see. And her reply to me was, let me just do this. And part of me was like, yes, and the other part was, she doesn't need me. What am I going to do? So I did come up the next day. We compromised on that. I let her have her emergency room visit and all of that. And then I came up the next day, and we caught up and kind of nursed her back, and she started classes. And what I realized in that, just that brief period, was that there was a strong need there for her as a young adult to have a little more independence than even I had already given her as a child, or getting ready for college. And so in one of our conversations that Angela and I had was about empty nest, and many of the parents had chimed in on that and said, I'm having these problems. I don't know, how long is this supposed to last? What do you do? What is my child supposed to do? And so that prompted this talk today. And empty nest is actually it's actually a psychological condition. They'll call it empty nest syndrome, and it primarily touches mothers, because mothers have more. There's more numbers, I guess I should say, of mothers who stay home, who take that 24/7, care of their child, and we begin. I mean, they're an extension of us. So fathers also experience it, but it does affect mothers more than statistically than fathers. And statistically, they say that it's 18 months to 2 years to transition back to whatever we consider normal. And I think in that time period, there's a lot of room for growth, not only on our part as parents, but on our child's part. And that's a big adjustment, because we see our child and all of the schedules, the events, ball games, classwork, brownie meetings, band practice, whatever it is that has consumed us as a parent. And we kind of shelve a part of us when we become parents. And then unconsciously, I think we might lose a little bit of that identity, and we become, how many of you have become, I'm Callie's mom? You know, the teachers at school, the children at school, you're Callie's mom, you know. And so that's who I morphed into, was Callie's mom. So when she went to college, who was I? You know, she's an only child. Now if you have multiple children, you might not have that, you know, that identity crisis. But with a single child, or even your first child going away, you can have that, you know, because you are wondering, oh, hey, now what, you know. And in that transition period, that is actually, there's, some people will call them favorable and some people will call them not so favorable. There are things that will happen with parents who have a harder time adjusting, and they, to the extreme of deep depression, self-medication, I mean, in the form of, you know, drinking or, you know, self-destruction. There's lots of things that happen in that realm. There's also, you may find that the person that you've been married to for years, you don't have anything in common. So you have two choices there. You either reconnect with that person or you make other choices, you know. And it is all in growing, you know, and the balance that comes from that, the freedom that it affords a parent is sometimes a little guilt-ridden for us, because we have spent so much time with our child, and then all of a sudden they're not there. And the first thing that happens is we walk by that bedroom 100 times in a week, and it's still there. But they're not, you know. The grocery bill gets a little lighter, you know, and that's always great, but that's the least of our worries as a parent. It's how are they doing? Are they eating? Are they staying up? Are they studying right? Are they making friends? Are they getting out? And we want to call and reach out and say, what are you doing? You know, you need to do this, you need to do that. I did that with Callie. I mean, I recall a conversation that we had, and I said, are you making friends? And she was like, Mom, you know, and I'm in college, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure you're okay. She's like, I'm fine. And she is fine. She was fine. They go through an adjustment just like we do. And naturally, they want to gravitate back to us, and we want them to. But for the overall better, we have to we have to sort of sever that a little bit and understand that we can still fix things when they're needed to be fixed, but, you know, they're not always, they can figure it out on their own. We've done a good job as parents that they can do that. So, are there any questions, like, as far as, like, or actually, you guys share with me, what are some of the issues that you've experienced with your child going away to college? Anybody?
Feels like he doesn't need us. I mean, he doesn't hardly call, and I'm trying to give him the space and just assume that if he's not calling, things are going well, and he's having a good time, and he's studying hard. But it's just not having that daily communication with them. I try to give him the space, and then, you know, if I don't hear from him the whole week, I might text him and say, how are things going? But I don't want to infringe on his time away and getting adjusted to college. But it's just like I've been really surprised that he's not initiating contacting us much at all.
Right. And that actually happens. One of two things will happen. They'll either call you all the time, or your calls aren't returned, or your emails aren't returned quite as often as we would like them to be. You know, and the initial stages, there's the excitement, and there's, you know, a couple of weeks of texting all the time and talking, and so you feel like, oh good, everything's going good, and then all of a sudden you're still texting at your speed, and you're not getting anything back, or you're calling and it's going to voicemail, and then our mind starts going, you know, what's going on, you know, are they sleeping, are they eating? And it's just that they're finding a little bit more independence, and they're just kind of making their way, and, you know, and that's a really good thing for them. And it's a good thing for parents, because it gives you the opportunity to find your way, to reconnect with things that are passions of yours that maybe you had disconnected from. You know, some people will write books, other people will get back into painting, gardening, volunteering. If you have other kids at home, it frees up your schedule a little bit and you're doing more things. But I mean, it is a huge adjustment for parents when they go through this. And I think for some fathers, it's a huge adjustment, because when they have a child that has become their buddy, you know, and then their buddy leaves, it's particularly, it can, I mean, I say buddy, but it's usually with their daughters, you know, because they worry that they're going to be okay, and that someone is, you know, that they're taken care of, or, you know, what happens if they have the flat tire, what happens if this, what happens if that, you know. And so for a father, those things I think are a little bit more intense as well, those feelings are. But for mothers particularly, I think that getting back in touch with who we are at the core is essential, you know, and it can be trying. So I suggest to people, you know, connecting with friends again, you know, and sharing your feelings. A lot of times we get caught in this thing where our child goes away to college, and so everybody says, you should be happy, they're gone, you should be good, you know, turn that bedroom into whatever, and, you know, and do all this great stuff. But it doesn't negate the feeling that there's a real void there for us. You know, there's a huge void that's there, and that is a loss. And we do grieve those things, you know. And it's not unlike having a child. Now granted, you know, your children come home from college and they visit on the holidays and you can still communicate, but the loss is not unlike that of having a child that passes away, because they're really physically not there, you know. And that stuff can come up at any time, you know. And then there's a shift in the weather and you pass the softball field and there's kids out and you're thinking, oh, it's that time of year, I miss that, you know, and you'll have a wave of emotion come over you, you know, and honoring that when it does come over, because a lot of times we'll tend to stuff that down and it's like, oh, it's okay, you know, I'm fine, it's all good, but we're not really being honest, you know, with ourselves with it. So, and that's important. And you know, like I said, honoring the transition for our independence and our growth, as well as our child's independence and their growth. And you know, Angela and I were talking earlier about, you know, when our children come home, and there's this, you know, and they do come home, and sometimes they bring laundry and sometimes they don't, but they do come home, and when they do, to honor that and to not understand that they have made new relationships. So they're going to be communicating with their friends and whatnot, but then also let them participate in, I know with Callie I've tried to do laundry, you know, let me just do your laundry, because it makes me feel like I still am needed, you know, and she's like, no, I'll do it myself. And so sometimes I'll sneak it just because I need to, and then other times she does it, you know, I mean, and that's fine. I mean, that's more my stuff. And it's important when our children are coming home and they're growing and we're communicating with them, that we do kind of keep in check anything that we have, any insecurities, fears, anything like that that we have about our own personal stuff. Because it's very easy to have a child that's growing up into a young adult and losing, we still are in a mindset of, they're my baby, but they're really now a young adult. So when we do get that sense of maybe I don't feel like they need me, or maybe they're not keeping in touch as much as I think they should, or whatever, that is generally our stuff. So to kind of get in touch with that and see what that is, what's going on in us, and resolve that. So are there any questions about any empty nest questions? At all? Yes, ma'am.
Well, my son, I mean, it just seems like he's become so independent, and he doesn't ask for anything. He doesn't seem to need anything. It's just like everything's going great. And then yesterday, you know, he made a comment about a paper and had a print. I'm like, well, do you have printing privileges on campus? He said, well, I used them all up like the first week. I'm like, well, do you need a printer? And so, of course, we went and bought him a printer, but he wasn't going to ask for anything. It's like, you need my own line, you know. So I'm just trying to let him be and just, you know, embrace the fact that he is maturing, he is independent, and allow him to be that, but it just seems like it's just going too well.
Yeah,
in
well,
some ways.
and how does that make you feel though? I mean, like you said earlier, it kind of makes you feel like you're not needed anymore.
Well,
but-
and then on the other hand, I feel like, well, I guess I raised him right and taught him to be that way.
Exactly.
So,
And that's, you instilled those things in him so that he's not finding himself at college feeling lost and pulling away and kind of disengaging. He's actually engaging. And so, and that's part of his independence is finding, not calling when he needs things because you've taught him to be self-sufficient and to take care of things. And that's a double-edged sword because we teach them, when we teach them well and then they don't call, then we want them to call, I told a friend of mine one day, we were talking and she was telling me about her son going away to college and she said, you just have to give them the wings, the roots and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's all well and good to say, give them, what is it, that we give them the roots and they have their wings or whatever. And I thought, that's great, but you give it a couple of weeks. And then let's talk about that whole quote because it's never quite the same as we think it's going to be, so.
and then if you have more than one child, I'm sure the experience is going to be completely different with your second or third or however many children you have. Because I know my two sons are just completely different as far as personality and study styles and just friendships. Just they're completely different. So it's like it's going well now, but what's going to be like in 2 years?
Right.
When our nest is completely empty.
Exactly. And you may find that when the last child leaves, that's when it hits the most.
Right.
Because then, there you are,
Right.
And any of your children can actually, where you have one that's well-adjusted and seems to just be out there doing their thing, you might have another one that's just like, I'm just not ready for this.
Right.
And don't be surprised if when they go, because University of Evansville offers the great opportunity of Harlaxton. So that, where most parents might think that that's a huge adjustment for them when their child's going overseas, a lot of times that's a bigger adjustment for the student when they leave. Because for many students, that's the first time they've ever been away from their parents, especially overseas, for a long period of time. And that can take adjusting. For the students, it can be a 1, 2 week, maybe even 3 week adjustment. Some of them, get off that plane over there and they are ready to hit the ground running. And other ones, they do need to adjust. So, and when they call home on those things, just that encouraging, that they're there for, this is a great opportunity for them, to be there and to see that another part of the world that they may never see or might not have ever had that opportunity, And then you're really tested on your communication skills with your children because, if you don't have it now here at University of Evansville, it's going to really thin out when they get over there because there's a time difference and they stay extremely busy with, classes and just the experience of traveling and all of that. So, have any of your students had issues? Yours has not had an issue adjusting. Has anyone had students that have had a hard time adjusting or anything?
No, our situation's probably a little different since we're local. And the younger one he was going to be living at home, but he really got sucked into that Greek life.
Okay.
And I mean, he went head first. And they want me to live in the house, and I can do this. And he pushed so hard to live in the house that his dad said, let him go. And we really did not agree on it because he's taken 17 hours, he's working 4 hours a day, and now he's going to live on campus. That's a lot in 1 year. And I have told my husband, I think he's setting up for failure. But you can't take all that on.
Yeah. So is that, and so see, that's something that has come up, like, in where.
This week.
This week.
This week. Because like he had to move out Thursday, and they gave him from Thursday to Sunday to decide. I said, this is not a quick decision. I said, I don't care what your fraternity says. You're not entitled to go there at a whim of a hat, when we haven't budgeted for them.
Right, right.
And I said, big deal if you don't get there. And my husband told him he's going to do his first semester, and, because he got senioritis really bad. And he got lazy his senior year. And he told him, he said, you're going to have to prove yourself this semester. And then Rick backpedaled. And he told me he could go ahead, because Dylan said, if I don't move in now, it's not going to be the same if you don't start off right off the bat.
Right.
And I said, too bad, figure it out second semester. But, so we're in a big disagreement. I think it's a lot of change. And not, from what I hear, a lot of kids don't work when they're in UE. We are these strict parents that make your kids work.
Not everybody works. See, we had our son work full-time all summer, and he saved all that money. And I thought he would get a little part-time job, but he did an excellent job saving his money, and he's budgeted where he doesn't have to work at least his first semester. And that's why I keep asking him, how are you doing on money? How are you doing? He's like, I'm fine. He's not a spender. So, and like I said, my second son's completely different. He's a big spender, so
This one is too.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, Kelly may have, do you have any insight or information on, I know I put her on the spot here, about a heavy load and, anything like that, or adjusting. You guys, if you have questions about anything, that from a student's perspective, she would be our go-to girl for the moment.
Well, and I know each kid's different. Some kids can handle it, and this kid does just get by the seat of his pants and comes out smelling like a rose smells in the child. And sometimes you think it's not fair, but this time I don't think he's going to skate by.
Yeah.
He has a full plate.
So have you guys had a conversation about that?
And I told him, I said, you moved in quick, and you're coming back home, and I'm working on a list of rules. This happens. And Rick did make him pay for it, which made him accountable, because he does have an entitlement issue problem. Don't know why he thinks he should get everything. And so, we know he wants this bad enough because he pulled it out of his savings to pay for it. Because they work too. And I listened to Dave Ramsey way too much because he said, those kids have time to work. You make them work when they're in school. And he said, because they will find time to party. And he said, they've got time to work. Because it would be easy to come in and say, okay, you don't have to work, just work a little bit.
So what happens when it comes down to his grades are good, but he's struggling, maybe he's not partying, maybe he is, but he's struggling to keep his grades up and to pull his load. Have you guys had a conversation about the consequences with that?
That's in this thing I'm typing up since it happens so fast. If your GPA falls below this, you're out of there. It's not quite the same standard that fraternity house has either. I have a little bit higher goal than they do. And, it's too bad you always have to control them with money. But when they get to a certain age, that's kind of all the leverage you've got.
But here's the thing also, what we have to realize as parents is that while we want to maybe control what's going on, sometimes their choices are not going to be the choices that we would make.
No.
And so they're going to have to fall. They're going to have to sometimes crash and burn. And it might really eat our goat that we have to watch that because that tends to, we take that on as parents as a reflection of us. Oh my God, they're going to have to leave UE and go wherever. What's everybody going to think? That's really not about us. It really isn't. So we have to be very mindful because right now, they are the young adults and they're fixing to get on up into the world. And so having the ground rules and the negotiations is very important, but also allowing them to fall if they need to. And
that's exactly what his dad said. He goes, this kid's got to learn on his own.
Absolutely. I have to side with Dad on that one. I do. And it's not to say that he, maybe he'll do great. Maybe he'll get some crappy grades. you know, but he has to navigate that on his own to figure that out so that he knows how to prioritize with what's going to work for him, you know, and he may come home and say, this list of rules looks great, I'm going to abide by this, and then also because of an independence that he has now, he might come home and say, yeah, this is not, I don't like this, you know. And of course, as parents, we use that whole, well, as long as you're in my house, you're going to do what I say, but we still have to be very, it's a very delicate place to give them that respect, you know, and to make sure that when they do, if they do fall, they might land on a hard place, but that they still know that we support them. We might not agree with how they fell, but they still have that overall support. You know, I mean, I know some parents have students that don't go to the colleges they prefer them to go to, or have students that take the workload that they wish they wouldn't take because they're afraid they're going to fail, or they, you know, they take a lesser workload and they think they're slacking. But really what's happening is they're navigating, they're learning this new way. So they have to figure out, okay, maybe 18 or 17 hours wasn't the greatest for me. You know, maybe I do need to take more, I have too much time on my hands. And then, you know, I've heard of friends and people who have students that they bomb that first semester or second semester, you know, and they're ready to chuck it. I'm just going home, you know, and then they're like, okay, wait, let me rethink this. And so giving them that space is really, as a parent, that's one of the biggest gifts that we can give them, you know, and not coming down so hard on them that we, even when they're 20 and 21, we still make them feel like they are going to make a wrong decision, because there are no wrong decisions. There are decisions that we might not agree with, but whatever decision they make, it's going to get them where they're supposed to be, you know.
Well, I told myself it's done. Now let's try to make the best of it. But, you know, there has to be rules, and I guess I'm really struggling with, it happened so sudden.
Right.
And the values and the morals and integrity.
Right. Is he your only child? No? Okay.
But it is a different lifestyle in that house
Right.
than
Than what you're prepared for. Because you have an ideal here of how he's raised and what your hope for him is. And now he's over here and you see this as the other side of the pendulum. But what happens there is you have to trust. You have to trust that you've done an excellent job as parents, and trust that he will make the right choices.
And that was the exact word I used. I said, I trust you're going to make the good choices in there and not go along with everything that happens.
And if he
And
does,
that's exactly what I told him. I trust you're going to do well.
and here's the other thing, if he does go along with the other guys, where you might have a disappointment, he still needs to know that he is not in disappointment. His choices might have disappointed you. We don't even know that he's going to make those choices. But should he make those choices might have been, you might be disappointed in the choices, but you're not disappointed in him. Because that then plants a seed of unworthiness, and I can't do anything right, and I'm never going to catch a break, and she's never going to trust me. And that is a hard road home, especially when they're just stepping into their value as an adult. So, and it sounds like for you there might be a little bit more of that. Well, it is. It's an unexpected kind of, not abandonment, but an unexpected loss. Because you intended him to be home. You thought that that's how it was all going. And in a matter of Thursday to Sunday, all of a sudden, Dad's siding with him, and you're going, wait, what's going on? Hold on a minute. And he's in a frat house.
And a dirty mattress. Oh my gosh.
But here's the thing.
Nasty.
the mattress might be nasty, but if he has no problem with the mattress, you're not sleeping on it.
No, I know.
So
No, I
just
wouldn't.
get him a mattress cover and call it a day.
A dust, what are they, dust mite proof, waterproof, what is it?
Whatever makes you happy and whatever he's okay with works out fine.
And a 2-inch pad in between him and that mattress. That's the best I can do.
There you go, there you go. Yes, ma'am.
How do you prepare when you have two children that are so very different and everything seems to have gone well for the first child, and you know that as you transition and your second child starts entering that phase of preparing for college, how do you treat them differently and not expect your second child to follow in the same patterns as your first child, because his personality is completely different?
Well, it sounds like you already know that.
Yeah.
So, it's just, it's being mindful that having open dialogue with them also is huge, because he may see the first one adjusting well and
Right.
think, I've got to do this too.
Right.
So having an open dialogue with them ahead of time and saying, you know, everybody's experience is different.
Right. And with my older son, who's a freshman, it wasn't a hard decision to accept the fact that he wanted to go away. But with our second one, he doesn't make the best choices. He's very impulsive. It's all, about his peers and impressing his peers, and studying is not a priority. And I have this fear about him going away to college and bombing. Not that he's not capable, it's just his priorities are not
So,
aligned as I think they should be aligned.
so what's the worst thing that happens if he goes to college and he bombs?
Then he comes home.
He comes home, but then you can set ground rules.
Right.
If he's home, he has to work.
Right.
Or you can say he can't come home. I mean, you can do that, it's kind of harsh, but you can do it, I think having that open dialogue with them well in advance and setting boundaries. I mean, boundaries are huge. And people need them. Adults need them, babies need them, young adults need them. And as long as someone knows and the communication is clear what the boundaries are, then they might get right up to the boundary, but they're not likely to cross it. So, and there has to be some flexibility there, I mean, set goals and things that are agreeable to both of you, especially at an age where they are, 18, 19, 20 years old, so.
Well, the one thing, he called last night like at 8 o'clock. I thought, oh my gosh, he's got to be in the hospital or he wouldn't be calling. And he goes, Mom, I can't remember what he called him, what his big brother, but the president of the fraternity or something. He said, he asked me to golf with him, and I just said yes. I didn't know it was 8:30 Sunday morning. Because without saying, he knew if he's living there, he still will be at church. That's, because I think I just want to keep him grounded. I mean, maybe if he hits with that at least once a week, he'll remember what we tried to instill in him for 19 years. He said, I'll miss Sunday school, which I have a big college group, so it's important to me they go to Sunday school and church. That wasn't even discussed, because he moved out so fast, he just knew that would be something. He said, I can still make church, we're only going to golf 9 holes, but I'll miss Sunday school. But he knew that was still important enough, he called home. But the one big mistake that I see, another thing with my husband telling him to do this, he spent his money to live in a fraternity house. The older one bought his car, and that was another rule that Rick had set for the boys. You're buying your own car, you're paying your insurance, and then we pay all the gas for them. I mean, each family picks out what they're going to do.
Right.
But it was important to Rick that they buy their car. Well, now this kid has spent his money on fraternity house, and he's driving our car. And I know we've got to go back and figure out, this one bought his own car, and this one's still going free in ours. I mean, those are, like, you've got 2 kids, you always want to try to be fair. Because I know we've got a big issue now that wasn't fair to Blake. And now Dylan's going around in the Tahoe, going everywhere he wants to go without expenses, which is not fair to Blake.
Right. So then,
But see, it was impulse, short decision.
right.
And I looked at Rick and said, what about the vehicle? And he goes, and Rick said, he goes, I probably made a mistake. He said, but we can't turn back now. I said, but we gotta figure out how to make it even.
Why can't you turn back now?
I would not pull him out of that fraternity house now,
No, but why can't you take the car?
because he's gotta get to work.
He's in a fraternity house. Let's make him all right.
I wouldn't expect them to drive him out to Daylight, Indiana.
I don't know where daylight is, but,
It's a pretty good drive.
well, then, does he, if he has saving, I mean, you guys need to work out
I
some
mean,
sort
now
of
we gotta
something where he's
figure out
going to,
something.
is he going to pay for this car, or is this just a
He can't
loaner?
pay for the car and do a fraternity, because he spent his, a
Well,
lot of
the
his
summer.
savings.
And
No, the
summer
summer,
he
he can work during the summer.
But I mean, those are things to think about when you've got to, because we've got to make this equal about the vehicle. It's not fair to the one, and the other one's getting to live out, but it has a car. So I mean, we've really got to work on that issue.
Well, and the other thing too is talking to the other son and seeing if it's even an issue for them. It may not be an issue for them, it just might be an issue for you guys, and then,
And I approached him first, I said, I know the cart came before the horse on this one. I said, give us time to work it out. He said, don't worry about it, Mom, we'll figure it out. Because we do try to keep things fair, but it is kind of a big deal, we gotta get worked out.
It is a big deal.
It
It's
really
gonna
is.
take all of you, the three of you, you know, working on that, you know, with an open dialogue.
But I'm not one to make quick decisions. They always seem to come back and bite you.
Right, but this may not come back and bite him. And this was, while you had to agree with it, it was really his decision, ultimately, right? I mean, he decided to join the fraternity, or to rush, or whatever it is they do.
He
I am
yes, he really wanted to
illiterate when it
join.
comes to,
He really wanted to.
okay,
But the last time Rick and I talked, Rick told me he was gonna tell him not till the second semester. But something happened between Rick and Dylan talking, and he changed his mind, and it came back to me, because it had to be decided in a matter of hours, and we all had different places to go. We talked, and we talked, and we talked, then we talked together. And I said, this is not what we said when
Right.
we talked here.
so it sounds like you and Rick need to get like
Yes, I mean,
together on any vacillating that goes on between, this is what we have agreed on, because that can cause issues with you guys, you
Yeah.
know, because it's like, I mean, this is what we agree on as parents, and then you go over here and you talk with him, and now you come back to me and you tell me that we're doing this, you know, and you're not prepared for it. So it's important for you to talk to him about what comes up for you there and what your fears are. And he may say, don't worry about it, it's not fears. But you deserve, both of you deserve an opportunity to express why you chose what you chose, or why, you know, you're standing your ground and he's decided to go this way.
and we just have to regroup with what we expect him to also keep up with.
But also don't expect, you can expect, but don't have an attachment to those expectations. Because when we have an attachment to those expectations, and then they don't show up the way we expect them to, unintentionally, we send that message that our kids are disappointing us. And our kids don't ever want to, I say kids, I know we refer to them as young adults and students, but ultimately they're our kids. And they don't want to disappoint us. That's the last thing they want to do. Even if they don't call home, or if, you know, if you have kids and they're not in touch all the time, they're not wanting to do anything, you know, that disappoints us. They want to make their parents proud. You know, they're smart kids. He's probably going to have some interesting challenges going on. You and Rick are going to have some interesting conversations going on, but it will work out, you know. And you just have to trust in that, and trust that you guys have done a great job as parents. And whether it's the car or the second child going away, you know, that they're going to work, you know, it'll work out the way it's supposed to. Maybe not the way we want it to, but trust in them. So,
That is the good word, to trust him.
And the fraternity might turn out a lot better than you anticipate, because he might make connections and it might help in his career later on, because there is a lot of networking through group life. So it might have positive
It may
effects.
be positive. It was just too quick.
And that's, I think, what you're struggling with, is that it was not what you expected, and it happened like that, and that's what's coming up for you, is that you weren't ready. And it's your little boy that you've raised and you've done, you know, had all of these intentions for and all of this stuff, and now he's on the other side, and you don't know what he's doing over there. You just have a perception of what goes on, and it's not, in your mind, most favorable for him. But you have to trust that he needs this experience in order to become what he's supposed to become. He needs to have this experience. He might fall or he might soar, but he has to do this. And you need to be able to support him without, I told you so, I knew this was going to happen. Because we've all been there. We've all done things in our life where, you know, our parents have thought, knew that was going to happen. And it's not a good feeling to have that. So we can shift that stuff around. And I know we probably need to wrap up, but I just, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Would you mind summarizing the important points and
Yes.
the things that people go through and what you have to say to that?
Yes. With empty nest syndrome, for me, what I can say to parents is, one, keeping open lines of communication between you, your spouses, other guardians of your children, and your children. You know, setting boundaries with them, but also understanding that they need, as much as we want and have a desire to take care of them and to fix their stuff, they need this opportunity to do it on their own, and they really crave that opportunity to show us that they can do that. And for parents to be gentle with ourselves, because there's an adjustment that comes along when we don't feel needed, when for 24/7, for 20 years, we've always been needed. You know, the banker, the nurse, the cook, the taxi driver, that's it, you know, and now they're gone. So there's that adjustment. You know, we'll have expectations, but don't attach a lot of energy to them, because just because it's our children are not maybe taking courses or classes or doing what we think they need to be doing to make them, and to make them is the whole thing, they're what they need to be. Their experience is exactly what it needs to be for them. So to be mindful, to express your feelings as parents when things come up, you know, and friends ask, how's it going? You know, you don't have to drag out the tissues and have a 30-minute boo-hoo session, but be honest and say it's been kind of hard, you know. We tend to want to go, I'm fine, it's all good. But we're not being honest when we do that, so, and that's gravely important. And the biggest thing is that, you know, change is inevitable, and it's not a bad thing. It's really a great experience for not only your child, but for you as a parent to reconnect, you know, with what's important to you and the things that you used to do that you might have forgotten that you love to do, you know. So it opens up a whole new growth that you then can share with your adult child. And it makes the relationship even better. You can imagine that. So, thank you.